After Xbox's huge acquisition just days ago of Bethesda, many people on the internet think that Microsoft is now targeting a major company with SEGA and is citing some crazy clues as to why this is. Bravely Default 2 gets a big update thanks to the Australian ratings board, and Nintendo beats leakers to the punch by leaking a new Nintendo Switch game on their own website. What's going on, guys? I'm RGT85. If this is your first time on the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And yes, they are still doing construction outside, so I apologize for any crazy noises. But without any further ado, let's talk about what's going on in the world of video games. So obviously, the world of gaming is still pretty shocked over Microsoft picking up Bethesda and all its subsidiary companies in a $7.5 billion acquisition. The future of Bethesda games on other platforms seems to be, well, a bit in question as well. As we know, games like Deathloop and Doom Eternal are still coming to the PS5 and Nintendo Switch respectively, but beyond that, things are just very open. I mean, what about a new Fallout game? What about Elder Scrolls 6? Will these be Xbox console exclusive and PC titles only, or will they still publish games on the PlayStation 5 and Switch similar to how Minecraft was handled? Honestly, we don't really know, but I'd venture to guess that Xbox would want to keep some heavy hitters as console exclusives to the Xbox brand because, well, it gives the player incentive to get into their ecosystem of games and streaming services. But now another company has popped up in conversations as being potentially bought by Xbox, SEGA. Now, we have talked about the Xbox and SEGA relationship before on this channel. I mean, let's be realistic. The original Xbox was essentially that Dreamcast 2 that is still supposedly coming out. SEGA fans can be really crazy with that stuff. SEGA's never making another console. But of course, the original Xbox had a ton of SEGA exclusive games on it. And a few months ago, there was of course rumors that SEGA and Xbox were planning something potentially pretty big. Rumors of this acquisition were flying around then as well, but I thought it would be more something along the lines of maybe SEGA to brand the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S in Japan as SEGA branded consoles, thus giving the Japanese audience, well, really a reason to care about Xbox for once. Let's be realistic, the Xbox brand never caught on in Japan due to the size of the system, the size of the original Duke controller, and the lack of JRPGs that the Japanese audience obviously is very fond of. However, none of this actually came to be, but it hasn't stopped a new wave of rumors to start popping up as well. Now, this is stemming from several different things, and I want to go over each thing individually. First off, yesterday Xbox announced a brand new controller color variation, and let's be real, it's pretty much a Sonic Blue controller. When you look at it, what's the first thing that pops into mind? Probably Sonic the Hedgehog. Xbox said in a tweet about this controller that the color was still iconic, which you can make say Sonic as well. Alright, so maybe it's a bit of a nod at the blue blur then. Obviously, Sonic's impact in gaming is pretty large. Let's not try to downplay that or anything. But then some people noticed that one area of the controller, because, well, the controller is blue all over, but there are sorts of different shades of blue in it, is the exact shade of blue as Sonic and the SEGA logo when pulled up in Microsoft Paint or in Photoshop. Now, this really doesn't mean anything for the rest of the controller because, like I said, there's different shades of blue on this controller, but okay, you know, I'll get into this conspiracy theory. The final bit of information, though, is a bit more interesting. In a tweet published by SEGA of Japan for Tokyo Game Show 2020, a person is seen laying down at a desk with their arms making an X. The translation of this tweet is that this is a good place on the desk. And above the X being made on the table with this person's arms is a box. You get it? It's Xbox! So really, what does this all mean? I think that's kind of the interesting part with this. Do I think SEGA is being bought by Xbox? No, I personally don't. We've talked about why before in the past, but SEGA isn't just SEGA, you have to remember that. SEGA, of course, owns Atlus. Atlus is a huge RPG company that puts games on a plethora of systems, and SEGA and Atlus are both owned by Sammy, who doesn't really have a need or desire to sell SEGA. They're obviously very happy with what SEGA is doing, and doing things like pachinko machines with SEGA branded IPs, which is very important for them in the Japanese market. Now, do I think that SEGA and Microsoft might announce a teaming up of some sorts, potentially a plethora of SEGA games coming to something like Game Pass? That's more than likely the situation with this. Remember, Microsoft has a very strong presence at Tokyo Game Show this year, and nobody really knew why because, well, like I said, Japan doesn't care about the Xbox brand. But this is something that could easily shift the perspective of the company in Japan by adding a plethora of games from the SEGA library to something like Game Pass for the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S. So no, I don't think there's a chance in hell that Xbox is purchasing SEGA, but I mean, then again, if you asked me a week ago if they were going to buy Bethesda, I probably would have said the same thing. What do you think about this situation though? Is this just people getting a bit too crazy with conspiracy theories, or do you think something is going to happen at Tokyo Game Show between SEGA and Microsoft, and all of these clues are just kind of leading up to it? Let me know in the comments section down below. Bravely Default 2 is of course the latest Square Enix game coming to the Nintendo Switch as an exclusive RPG title that was originally slated for 2020 for the Nintendo Switch. Real-world situations of course put a bit of a damper on this, and then it shifted to a to-be-announced announcement, looking more in line with probably a 2021 release. Couple that with the fact that other Square Enix games ended up getting delayed in 2020, such as Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remake, it pretty much seemed like Bravely Default 2 was lined up for a 2021 release. Or is it? The Australian Ratings Board just put up a rating for Bravely Default 2 today. Now, if you know anything about things like the Australian or the Taiwanese rating board, which we commonly reference on this channel, you would know that when these games get rated, usually about within 2 months or so, they end up releasing worldwide. Now, I'm not good at math or anything, but the month we are currently in is in September, and 2 months from now would be November, which can be a pretty popular month for new game releases with the holiday seasons coming up. Obviously, we would have to get some sort of confirmation and announcement from Square Enix about a release date, but once again, Tokyo Game Show is happening over the next few days, and we know that there's going to be big stuff at this event. Monster Hunter Rise will be getting some more details. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity is getting a 50-minute presentation, so companies aren't taking this event lightly or anything, as it's one of the premier Japanese game shows every year. Obviously, Bravely Default 2 is a game that's going to be very popular in Japan because it's a JRPG, so it would kind of make sense for them to talk about this game. Hell, did you hear the rumor that Xbox might be buying SEGA and announcing it at Tokyo Game Show 2020? Oh wait, we already talked about that. Regardless, it does appear that Bravely Default 2 will be coming in 2020 due to this rating, and it'll be interesting to see if it's talked about at Tokyo Game Show or maybe at an upcoming partner presentation for Nintendo. And finally, you know what, Nintendo, you think you're slick. You think you're slick because this year has just been the weirdest year for you to announce your games. You're like, oh, we have these Nintendo Directs that we normally do where we announce everything, but we're not really going to do them anymore. We're just going to randomly talk about games because, hey, that's the way 2020 goes. First off, we of course had Paper Mario, the Origami King, which, well, it came out of nowhere, saving the summer for the Nintendo Switch with the really fun game. And this game, of course, was released 2 months after it was announced. Then you had the Super Mario 3D All-Stars Collection, you know, that game that totally didn't exist. That game was of course announced and released roughly 2 weeks after the announcement, giving Nintendo a huge September game that, yes, it had some controversy tied to it, and yes, essentially it really is a cash grab, but I mean, who cares? It's my favorite cash grab ever by far. Make sure you check out my video on Super Mario 3D All-Stars if you haven't yet, because it was fun to make that video. And then of course we had Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, another game that absolutely no one knew anything about. This game gets announced and is now releasing in November for the Nintendo Switch. But what if Nintendo they just didn't announce a game? What if they made you find this game on your own? Well, that's what they have done with a new Kirby game coming to the Nintendo Switch. Late last night on the play.nintendo.com website, and a very interesting discovery was made. A new Kirby game is evidently coming to the Nintendo Switch, and it's going to cost you $19.99. The game in question is Kirby Fighters 2. Now, the original Kirby Fighters released on the 3DS, and honestly, I have no recollection of it, but looking at the original game trailer, it does look pretty fun. There's a single player mode, a bunch of Kirby stages, online play that honestly looks a lot like Smash Brothers with various Kirby related characters, Kirby related levels, and of course huge attacks, and some really pretty graphics for the Nintendo 3DS. The new game, Kirby Fighters 2, is adding in a new wrestler ability according to the listing that was posted on Nintendo's website, and I'm sure we'll have a bunch of additional content as well. Now, of course, a few hours after being discovered and talked about online, the listing for the game was removed. But considering I saw it with my own eyes, as well, I was up late buying some WWF Hasbro figures on eBay. Look, the auctions ended at like 2 a.m. my time. I had to make sure I got these figures because I just needed them for my collection. Nintendo has indeed found a new way to introduce games to Nintendo Switch owners, randomly putting them up on their website. Now, will you be checking out Kirby Fighters 2? I'm going to assume this game is probably a 2020 game. The game already has an icon, a pretty detailed listing about what to expect from the game, and of course a price point for the game as well. And really, is the original game fun? Because like I said, I never played the original Kirby Fighters. Let me know in the comments down below because, yeah, like I said, I don't know anything about this game. Alright, so that is going to do it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Be sure to let me know what you think of everything in the comments section down below. Is Xbox buying Sega next? Probably not, but they are probably going to be teaming up for something that will be showcased at Tokyo Game Show. Bravely Default 2 seems to be a 2020 title now. Are you excited again for this game? And Kirby Fighters 2. Should I care about Kirby Fighters? Was the first Kirby Fighters game fun? I need to know these things, damn it. I need to know. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Check out other videos on the channel. There probably will be another video today as the new games came out for the NES and SNES online service, and I have to ruin your childhood by talking trash about these games, but I am looking forward to playing them, of course. And as always, guys, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.